your introduction to diving, treasure hunting, and the making and the filming of that. And I'm not sure what came first, but I think it was the diving first. Was it in that order?
No.
Okay.
So remember, you described me as I'm a storyteller.
Yes.
Another way to say that is I'm a lifelong professional bullshitter.
Yeah. Okay.
In other words, the story comes first, then the reality. So watch this. I'd graduated with a finance degree. I got band, an old-fashioned record deal where they write you a check for $250,000 and go think about music.
Because you remembered April Wine when you were 15.
Yeah, well, I knew from the April Wine guys that music was also another way out. Like music was a blue ocean place then. This was like 1978, 1980. Like music was still a way out for guys like me.
Right.
And so I had my finance degree. I had this band, and I was trying to balance the two things. I'm going to be an accountant, finance person, and a musician.
What was the band called?
Blackpool. I was in a band with a guy named Chris Murphy, who most people now know from Sloan.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So we had a successful band. We traveled the world. We got to go on tour with everybody. Tragically, Blue Rodeo, Bare Naked Ladies, all that stuff. And I actually, this is going to sound funny, I liked accounting as much as I liked being on the road with the band. So I kept trying to balance the two things. And then Nova Scotia, do you want to stop in? You want to check in? So Nova Scotia, at this point, had the East Coast Music Awards. And the government had decided that that was all going good, and they wanted to do something to help the film industry. Through my position in the field, which was accountant plus musician, I got a meeting with the premier. And it was like, okay, what are we going to do? I have an idea. I had seen in Quebec, they had a cultural tax credit through this SODEC Quebec. They described it as ensuring that their citizens return to the river to spawn, okay? Yeah. Like, imagine Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
William Shatner going back to Quebec. So I thought we could do this in Quebec. What they did in Quebec, we could do in Nova Scotia. So a labor-based, industrial, fully refundable tax credit for people who could bring film and television to Nova Scotia.
Excellent.
Got it set up, went from doing about $6 million a year in film business in Nova Scotia to 60 in 1 year.
And that was before you had a studio.
I didn't have anything. I was just, my joke was accountant plus rock musician equals something in TV. Yeah. So I had got this set up, but then it was done. So my choice was to be an administrator of a tax credit, a program administrator, or go do something else. So I took my money from all this, and I thought, this sounds like a leap, but this is pretty normal for me. I'm going to be a treasure hunter. Again, blue sky. Blue ocean. Because at that time, Nova Scotia had a Treasure Trove Act where you could just fill out a little form and go hunt for treasure. And
keep it?
And more or less yours, most of it. If something was culturally significant, they might have an interest in it. But it was a wild west of treasure hunting. It's not that way now, by the way, and rightfully so. But I thought I was going to do this. Anyway, I'm like 2 years into treasure hunting, and I realized there's some really interesting things here. You can't spend treasure. You can't take a gold stick or a chain and even get a Big Mac meal.
Right.
But money was coming in. It was all coming in from Discovery Channel, National Geographic. I said, I'm not a treasure hunter. The story is the treasure.
Right.
And I'm a TV producer. So that was that's the defining. I know that was a long way around, man, but that's the defining moment. It's like the story is the treasure.
Right.
And it also occurred to me at that time, this is like 2000, that we live in an age of story wars. Whoever has the best story wins. And Nova Scotia has a genuine competitive advantage here because I'm not the only bullshitter in this province. It's
a province of bullshitters.
It's a social currency.
Yeah.
Can you take this story and make it better.
We took the boys when they were young once to the Midtown. We had a Boxing Day tradition where fathers and sons and brothers-in-law went to the Midtown Tavern, which is a 85-year-old tavern now in downtown Halifax, for Boxing Day breakfast. And so when our boys got old enough, I brought my son and a couple of his buddies. And one of his buddies brought their little brother. Now, the little brother at the time had never been in a pub before.
Nice.
And so he was probably, 11 years old. And he was a little kid at 11. And so as we're driving in with him and his dad, I said, now, Maddie, we're going to have to give you some instructions here. And one of the instructions, of course, was how to order food at the Midtown, which is very straightforward. I'd like a steak, fries, gravy, no coleslaw. Try that. Okay. Just practice that. So he had to practice that a few times. So he got his order down. And I said, now, what's going to happen is there's going to be some storytelling that goes on. And I said, you go along with the story, you pay attention to the story, but at some point it will be appropriate for you to say, and I want, repeat after me, I call bullshit. You see, because that's what you can say at the pub.
Yeah.
That's what you can say. You can challenge the story.
Yeah.
You can challenge the story.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And the other thing, Maddie, is you have to tell your own story at the pub. Like, it goes around the table. Like, you can't just absorb stories or call bullshit on other people's stories.
It's a social currency.
So it's a social currency. So he learned his lesson. He did well.
It's an amazing thing. My grandmother, we would go there each Saturday, and on Friday night, MacGyver was on. So we'd arrive on Saturday morning, and she would explain what happened on MacGyver. And I was enthralled. I was just thrilled with MacGyver and all the things he got up to and what he represented and why it wasn't. One of the worst experiences of my life was I eventually, the way things work, I got to see MacGyver, the actual show, and it was terrible. My grandmother, my 78-year-old grandmother's retelling of it was so much better because she was able to make it up. And there's certain tools, you talked about the hero's journey, you set up like where this is going. Why do I care what happens in the story? But there's even just simple things, There's a joke about the improv people say yes and, to keep something moving. In storytelling, it's the opposite. In storytelling, you want to say but. Everything was good. We were traveling across the bridge at regular speed, but then
something happened unexpectedly.
Yeah. So Nova Scotia even has language for this because you don't want to just repeat but all the time.
Right.
So in Nova Scotia, they would say, so that was good. Right?
Yeah.
We got through the snowbank. So that was good.
But yeah, that's right.
And so there's just a natural vocabulary of storytelling here. Yeah. And that's how, so all the things you're talking about, they seem like different things, but it's really all the same thing. So I went to the folks at Discovery Channel down in Silver Springs. Yeah. And I said, we want to make this this TV show about shipwrecks and treasure hunting, but it's stories. And I think I came back from that first meeting with $2.4 million.
Wow.
To make.
How many episodes is it?
For 13 episodes in those days was a series. But there's parts to stories that you don't say out loud. They're called enthymemes. Like, what's a premise of this argument that you don't say out loud? So what I didn't say out loud, but which they heard loud and clear, was I was a storytelling guy from Nova Scotia, which is very shipwrecky and Titanic-y and all that stuff. If they had given a shipwreck show to somebody from Toronto, they're probably going to get fired. It's probably going to end in tears. Right. But there's a plausible argument, no matter how this turns out, that of course the guy from Halifax was going to bring the shipwreck show in. So at that point, I had never been diving. I'd never really been even meaningfully outside of land.
You could swim.
We grew up swimming, so I'm very comfortable around the water. But so I took some of the money and I bought a 1947 Heisler wooden fishing schooner built in southern Nova Scotia. And the man down in Hubbard's kind of showed me how to sail it around the harbor, and I sailed it back to Halifax.
It's a schooner.
It's a schooner.
Two masts.
Like a 38-foot.
Yeah.
Like imagine the Blue Nose, but shrunk down.
Small, yeah.
And by the time I get into Halifax Harbor, long after midnight, I knew how to sail. I had been out of sight of land. And then, so I just had to learn how to dive.
You could have been your own shipwreck.
Yeah, I could have. I needed to learn how to dive. There's a very old school commercial diving company in Halifax called Dominion Diving. Famously adventurous company.
Tough guys.
Yeah. For real tough guys, made their fortune digging up stuff off Sable Island and supporting the offshore natural gas. This is in the 1990s, 2000, they still dove with what you would think of as Jacques Cousteau.
The full glass.
They did that, but also double hose regulator, like imagine a frogman.
Right.
And so I was very influenced by them. I said, that's how I'm going to dive too. And I still dive that way today. All my gear is older than me.
Wow.
And it's a different kind of diving. If anybody's taken a PADI course or whatever, that's modern best practices.
Yeah.
That's not how this works.
So you said a minute ago that what you realized in all this was that the treasure was in the story.
The treasure was in the story. So to put it in the modern vernacular, the treasure of the story we call IP.
Right.
Intellectual